Welcome back to another episode of Menopause Moguls Navigating Midlife-ish with yours truly, Dr. Joyelle. So I want to follow up from the last episode when we were talking about how I was talking about how I keep going even though when I don't see results. When this midlife body is not bodying. When it's like doing its own thing, changing all the rules. I wanted to go a little bit deeper about why that is happening. I've had many moments in this journey where I'm looking at my body. Why are you gaining weight when you're doing everything right? You're eating what you're supposed to be eating, you're exercising, you're moving your body, and this fupa is still fupaing. Like, what? Right? Like you look at your body, like you got these extra rolls in the back, extra rolls in the front. Just, things you just don't like. Let's be real, y'all. Like I am just so intentional about trying to be just keeping it real, right? Like, not to be vain, but again, you hold yourself up to um a goal, a standard for yourself, right? And I'm not, in the space of comparing myself to anybody. I'm way past that. It's just a certain way that I would like to look, a certain way that I like my body to look on the outside. But wholeheartedly, I certainly is more important for what it feels on the inside. And I really want to definitely double down on that. But again, we still care about what it's looking like on the outside. Let's not, let's not make make it seem like, oh, we're not going to care. Like we do care. We care, right? But I wanted to talk about real reasons why our midlife weight is changing and why this extra weight is here. Um, I know we this always, people think like, oh, your hormones are changing and that's really what's going on and that's really it. And it's so much more than that. So much more than that, right? So I know many of you, like myself, are in a position where they're like, I have the same workouts, the same eating habits, the same discipline. And my body, I still got this menopause muffin top. I still got this extra body rolls. I still got this, right? My waistline ain't doing what it's supposed to be doing. Um, in, Even in addition to that, we are pushing through life, right? Like a lot of us are definitely taught to push through. Um, and life can be exhausting, right? So we're pushing through exhaustion. We're exhaustion. We're carrying a lot of things. Some of these things we should not be carrying, but we are. We're carrying other people, and we still, put the pressure on ourselves to do all of that and maintain this 30-year-old body that we used to have, right? And the midlife body is like, nah, you're doing something different. The rules have changed. What you used to do is not working. And what you used to do in your 20s and 30s is not working for these 40s and 50s, right? So it looks different. But I want to speak to the fact that midlife weight gain, midlife weight changes is multifactorial. There's many things that are going on. I also want to hopefully relieve some of the frustration because I have not only for myself, but also speaking to other women, how they're doing all the things, all the right things, right? And their body is just like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to stay the way I am. And you're going to keep, doing all the crunches that thousands of crunches and that belly is still going to be bellying. Right. And you get very frustrated and you also can judge yourself. You can also blame yourself. So I want to get away from, the feeling or maybe even the belief that, oh, maybe, I have a lack of discipline or I'm just not doing it right or maybe laziness. Now, sometimes we can get a little lazy. All right. I know I can. And that's okay. We're allowed. But I want to speak to the fact that it's not the lack of discipline, it's not your lack of even willpower. It's really multiple things that are happening that are causing your weight to change, that are causing you to gain weight. You know, not just hormones. There's also stress. There's also sleep disruptions. There's also muscle loss. All these things are interacting together and contribute to the changes in your weight. So I wanted to speak to that. And, you know, in addition to your body's also just been responding to all these things that are happening in your life, all the stressors, all the pressures that you may feel, caregiving. And again, some of us have been walking around just exhausted. And all of that affects our weight. So I wanted to talk about what's really happening as we are getting into these big ages, when it comes to our bodies changing, and we may feel frustrated, we may feel um, maybe even overwhelmed with all the different things that are, you know, presented to us, you know, this crash diet, this hack, this, that, you know, all of these things. In actuality, we really have to take other things into account besides just changing your eating habits and your exercise routine. Okay? So, um, so when we talk about the changes in our weight in our midlife bodies, um, we have to talk about hormones, right? Because there is a hormone shift as we are entering perimenopause. Our estrogen levels, estradiol is the most prominent, is the most dominant estrogen. There's three different types of estrogen. Estradiol is the most dominant, and that is fluctuating. And as we are entering menopause, that estrogen level or estradiol level is declining. And when that level is declining, it is changing the way the fats in our body are distributed. And you can notice an increase in the abdominal fat, the fat around your midsection. And I know it is annoying AF. Y'all, it can be annoying, right? And yes, it has something to do with our estrogen levels changing. Um, as those levels are changing, the fat distribution is now making its way to our midsection. Um, Also, as estrogen levels are declining, our blood sugar levels become harder to regulate. So those things are coming into play. So hormonal shifts certainly can change the way our body stores the fat, right? Fun times. I know. So there's that. All right. So hormone shifts, it definitely come into play, but there's other things. The other thing is a loss in muscle mass. Now, or lean muscle mass. That actually starts in our 30s, which, you know, nobody really tells us this, right? But it's actually starting in our 30s when we start to lose lean muscle mass. And it dramatically increases when we're reaching these perimenopause, menopause ages in regards to, you know, early 40s, into our 50s. So when we are losing that muscle mass, that is now affecting our metabolism. Like our metabolism slows down, um, and our ability to obtain more energy decreases, because there's now fat filling in those places where the muscle used to be, or, you know, used to play a role. So, um, so losing muscle mass certainly also contributes to weight gain in midlife. And just thinking about our approach when we're taking care of our bodies when it comes to exercise and movement and things like that, the things that we were doing. And, you know, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I did a lot of cardio. Like I didn't really do anything as far as weights. And I didn't do a whole lot. I mean, I'm not gonna say anything, but I didn't do a whole lot of weights. I didn't make that my focus. I was focusing on, certainly a lot of cardio. But that needs to change when you come into these midlife streets. Um, so that is, that's a thing. So your changes in muscle mass, which also just comes with aging, not just particularly from the decline in estrogen, but also just with aging. Our bodies naturally can lose lean muscle mass. We need to be aware of that. The other thing is chronic stress and changes in our cortisol levels contribute to the weight gain in midlife. Now, when estrogen declines, our cortisol level also elevates during that. But in addition to that, the chronic stressors that we have endured over the years essentially promotes fat storage in our bodies. So with that, in addition to our nervous systems just essentially staying in survival mode affects our metabolism. So all of those things come into play, and especially, as high achieving women, as high achieving Black women, there are many stressors, whether it's work stress, being the only, um, having to work twice as hard, the stress of maintaining finances, the stress of caregiving, the stress of caregiving, aging parents as well as raising children, microaggressions that we may endure throughout the day, racism, like all these things, right? Um, Essentially creates chronic stress, which essentially elevates our cortisol levels, which essentially affects, you know, how our weight or how our body is responding um, in regards to its metabolism. So all of that comes into play when we talk about weight gain in midlife. And, essentially chronic stress elevates cortisol, and that can also promote cravings, especially for sugar. Sugar, oh my gosh. Um, but that also can increase the inflammation in our bodies, which is another thing um, that can contribute to weight gain. Chronic inflammation. When our hormones are shifting, that can also put our bodies into a pro-inflammatory response, essentially increasing the inflammation internally. That also promotes, fat storage. That promotes, essentially can lead to weight gain. That can lead to dysfunction when it comes to insulin. Our insulin um, is not working the way it's supposed to, which essentially is insulin resistance. Our body becomes resistant to the insulin that you need to regulate our blood sugar levels. So all of that also comes into play, right? Um, so that, in addition to um, just insulin resistance in general, we talk about we go to our primary care doctors and they check different levels, just kind of our physical labs. We get a hemoglobin A1C, and that basically kind of tells the doctor over a 3-month period or so how your blood sugars have been managed. Um, but I also have encouraged women to have their fasting, sugar levels checked, or, blood glucose levels checked, as well as their insulin levels checked, because they can be insulin resistant. As we're aging, as our bodies is changing, insulin resistance can develop. Insulin is a hormone that essentially helps our bodies regulate blood sugar levels. It helps our bodies turn food into fuel. So when our bodies now become resistant to that insulin, or not, respond to it, that creates more problems, right? I actually did one of those glucose monitoring, like continuous glucose monitoring. I think it was Dexcom. And that was very helpful in regards to just seeing how my body responds to eating different foods. And I learned quite a few things, right? Like the oatmeal that I used to eat every morning, the instant oatmeal that I used to eat every morning actually raised my blood sugar quite high. Like, you're thinking about oatmeal, oh, that's healthy. But some of the things that we can, um, buy in the stores and, thinking that we get in the healthiest thing may not be as healthy as we thought. Um, and can have those, hidden sugars that, that you're not aware of. So wearing that continuous monitor actually made me think about, again, the things that I was eating, as well as pay more attention to the ingredients of the things that I was buying from the store. Um, because I've also learned that, when I talked about inflammation, the foods that we eat, especially the ultra processed foods, can cause loads of inflammation within our bodies, which can lead to dysregulation of our metabolism, um, and, ultimately can affect our weight. So there's that. More things to, be mindful of. But, again, inflammation can play a big part when we talk about our body's response to aging and our body's response to the hormones that are shifting and that are ultimately declining in menopause. We have to be mindful of other things that can be contributing to how our body is responding, right? Or how our body is presenting. So, inflammation, ultra processed foods that can potentially cause inflammation can certainly um, be contributory to midlife weight gain. Also, sleep disruption. Like, I think we underestimate the power of sleep, um, because really, like, we're so used to, we've normalized sleep deprivation, to be honest, right? Like, we have been pushing through just being exhausted and not really prioritizing sleep. But when we undergo or endure sleep deprivation, that also affects the hormones that tells us that we're hungry, tells us to stop eating, that basically tells that, the satiety hormone. These hormones are now dysregulated because we not sleeping like we're supposed to, right? And that sleep can be, obviously can be from night sweats and hot flashes. Hormone the hormone shifts can also affect our sleep, aging, um, all of those things essentially can sleep apnea, um, can contribute to sleep disruption. But again, being aware of that, I think a lot of people are not aware that lack of sleep or sleep deprivation can also lead to weight gain. So being aware of that, I think, is important, um, because again, we're so used to being on the grind and doing all the things and not knowing that, poor sleep can affect um, our hormones regulation. It can affect our appetite. It can affect many body systems. It can affect how our body responds to the insulin. Like all these things, certainly can have an influence on how our body um, is, you know, shifting its, its fat distribution and the weight gain. All of that comes into play. Um, So yeah, those are kind of a conglomerate of multiple things, right? It's not just about, not eating the right thing or not doing the right exercise when it comes to midlife weight changes and midlife weight gain. There are multiple things that are going on that we need to be aware of so that we can do the appropriate things to take care of our bodies as we are aging and trying to get to those goals that you have, for your body. But I hope that knowing that it's just not about, what you're eating and your movement, um, helps a little bit with the frustration of, doing all the things and you're like, it's not working. And, doing, cussing your body out and, getting frustrated and annoyed. Which, we can, and it's okay. But at the same time, I don't want you to beat yourselves up and, like, give up, right? I want you to continue to keep going, like we talked about in the last episode, but then essentially kind of figuring out what is the shift that you need to do specifically for you that's, helpful for you. All of our bodies are different, right? But what's the specific thing that you need to do in order to get to the goals that you want when it comes to your weight management? So for me, when we talk about strategies for weight management and ultimately, losing a little bit of weight, right? I know that can be a goal for many of us. For me, and what I've told or coached many of my clients is prioritizing. Number one is prioritizing protein in our diets so that we can have support for our muscles. It also can help stabilize our blood sugar levels, decrease some of the cravings. So I have been more intentional about adding protein to every meal. For breakfast, I have usually a protein smoothie. So I throw some protein powder in there with some spinach and fruit, and that a lot of times is my breakfast. And then lunch and dinner, adding salmon or chicken or tuna to a salad, or just having, chicken or even, steak or some type of beans, or, things that are heavy in protein amounts to that meal, along with some vegetables, right? And snacks usually, can be nuts or Greek yogurt with some fruit. So you figuring out what that protein choice is good for you. Again, everyone likes what they like. And we have to learn to like some things that we thought we wouldn't, we typically wouldn't. But again, these midlife bodies calls for trying new things. So sometimes, figuring out what that thing is, that will allow you to add protein to, throughout the day, to help support your muscles, to help support blood sugar levels, to help. That is certainly one thing that I am doing to help um, manage my weight. So that's number one. Number two is strength training. I certainly have been more intentional about weights, lifting weights, over the last few years, because strength training certainly is very helpful when we talk about, losing this lean muscle mass that we lose. Strength training kind of helps builds that back up, supports our bones, also supports our metabolism. Um, so lifting weights, and again, you figure out what is comfortable for you. And it doesn't have to be heavy weights. But I think the point is that we, like I said in the beginning, I used to weigh my workouts heavily on cardio. But I do less cardio these days as opposed to, what I used to do before. So less cardio and more weights. And I think I have the mindset of I aim to be stronger, in this midlife body, stronger than I used to be, right? So I think we have to also shift our mindsets when we talk about weight loss per se, which again, you want what you want, and that's fine. But I think in addition to that, you also have to have the mindset that you also want to be strong. As you're wanting to lose weight, you also want to be strong in the process. So adding weights, I think, is important. So that's number two. Number three is managing our stress. Okay? Managing your stress like your health depends on it or your life depends on it. And it does. It does depend on it. The stress that we whew, endure throughout this life, y'all. Now, I know that there's a lot of things that we cannot control, right? A lot of things that we can't control. But focus on the things you can, and more importantly, how you are responding. I think when we talk about the changes in our midlife bodies and the things that we can go through, we can respond with anger and frustration and all the things, but if we shift that response to have more compassion for our bodies, to have more patience with our bodies, I think that is very important when it comes to managing the stress that we endure. But there's also obviously other things, the invisible loads that we may carry, the emotional labor that we carry. So also looking at those things, evaluating burdens that we are carrying that may not really be ours to carry. So making those type of evaluations, right? And trying to let go of that invisible load that doesn't belong to us. So managing stress to decrease those cortisol levels is important, and also to decrease the inflammation in our bodies. So that can also look like setting boundaries. Um, Obviously, um, being still with ourselves, creating space for that, creating space, obviously, for creating joy in our lives and doing the things that brings us joy, saying no to things, right? Like many of us like to, again, be everything to everybody, and in these midlife streets, we have to be everything to ourselves. So managing stress management is certainly is important. Number four is protecting our sleep, creating those sleep habits to allow us to get a good night's sleep. Technically, we need 7 to 9 hours of sleep, y'all. Now, I personally am not there yet. Okay, I'm working on it. I continue to work on it. I have now tried to unwind before I go to bed. I put my jazz music on. I just kind of, you know, uh, give myself just some time to just relax before just hopping on the bed and thinking I'm just gonna go fall asleep. Sometimes I do a brain dump and basically kind of write all the things that that are on my mind in that moment. A to-do list, write that out so I don't have to be thinking about it when I go to sleep. So just figuring out what that thing is for you to help you um, have a good night's sleep. And sometimes if you're having night sweats and things like that, you may need to see your doctor to figure out what you can do to help with those night sweats so that you can have a good night's sleep. So, figuring out those things out, but protecting your sleep is certainly important. Um, Midlife certainly requires intentional rest, right? And I mean nourishing, restorative rest, restorative sleep is essential as you are, navigating all the things in your life, but certainly it's essential to managing your weight. That's number four. And I would say number five, especially the thing that I'm also being more mindful of, is optimizing my gut health. Your gut health is way, way, way important when it comes to um, managing um, weight, because our gut health is also changing. Our gut, let me say, our gut microbiome is what it's called. Essentially, is this environment of bacteria that lives in our gut. It affects a lot of things. It's like almost, oh, I can't even talk. It's actually like a second brain in our bodies, where it's so many things that are happening in our gut. there's other hormones being synthesized or produced there, like our serotonin, which is our mood stabilizer. Um, and the bacteria that lives in the microbiome, that essentially, if it becomes discombobulated, basically, it causes more inflammation in our bodies. That causes more internal stress. It all lives in this ecosystem where if one thing happens, it affects the next thing and the next thing. It's like a domino effect. So optimizing our gut health is so important, where we are being mindful of what we are eating. Um, Really looking at the foods that we're eating, there's so many processed stuff that's promoted to us, ultra processed stuff that is so bad, which is crazy of how, ugh, it really is frustrating to see that. I honestly feel like, y'all, like they trying to kill us with these foods they putting out on these shelves in these stores. Like, it's just, wish I had a green thumb where I can just go plant all the things in my backyard. But I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. But I know I have friends who are growing so many great things, and they have chickens and like, oh, that is so cool, right? Um, but in the meantime, until I get myself together, I'm just more mindful of what I'm picking up in the store, especially with these three kids. I'm trying to, also be mindful of their health, which, they have to be also mindful of what they're eating, try and teach them that also, because the processed foods that we're eating causes so much inflammation in our bodies, which can also dysregulate our hormones, which also leads to weight gain. Like, it's just so many things. So just being mindful of that and optimizing our gut, our microbiome, which is very important. Um, so that was number 5. Okay, so number 1, when we're talking about weight management in midlife, number 1 was prioritizing protein. Number 2 was strength training and moving our bodies. Definitely movement is important. Number 3 was managing our stress. Number 4, protecting our sleep. Number 5, optimizing our gut health. And I will also actually say number 6 is speak life over your body. Stop cussing her out. Be patient with her. Have some compassion. Give her some grace. But because it takes time, y'all. And I'm saying this to y'all, but I'm saying that to myself. Because sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, really? Or it really comes up for me when I have an event to go to. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to wear. And I'm like, oh, I can't fit this. Let's try this on. Like, this is too tight. Like this. So I get it. I get it. But at the same time, I'm like, all right, girl. Yeah, we can't wear this today. Maybe in a couple months we can wear this again, but not right now. So let's figure out what else we can wear that you can still look cute. Okay? So I try to, speak nice to her, give her some grace. She's trying. She's trying, and I just have to be patient. Just have to be patient. Okay? All right, y'all. I think that is all that I wanted to say in regards to all of that. That, essentially, that, midlife weight gain, midlife weight management is a multifactorial process. So being mindful of that, I think is important, so that you won't get so frustrated, that you won't, um, judge yourself so, harshly when you're trying to navigate the changes that your body's, some of the changes you obviously can't control. But there are things that you can control, and doing those things and figuring out which things work for you. Because what works for one person may not work for you as well. So again, this is, kind of a game of, trial and error, where you're trying to do, certain things to figure out what works best for you. And I'm certainly in that stage. Um, Doing the same thing. So I'm doing it here with you, y'all. All right. So your body is just asking for a different kind of care as you are, getting into these big ages. Your body is not betraying you. It's speaking to you. And you just have to decide to listen and figure out what she needs in order to take, care of this evolving evolution of your midlife body. All right. So I hope that was helpful. Uh, and just want to reiterate, I'm on the journey with y'all. Doing the things. I just finished the workout, before I came on to record. I actually just joined a challenge with my sisters of, 10,000 steps a day. So, so you know, so I just wanted to share that information, just so you'll have that and you won't get as frustrated because, you can still get frustrated, which is okay. But I hope that helps you to just, um, take a step back and give yourself a little bit of grace as you're going through this process of managing your weight. And I don't even get into all the other things that are out there that I know that a lot of people, I would love to have more of an expert on to talk about the GLP-1s and those type of things. So hopefully I can do that in the future. But in the meantime, I just wanted to give you just more of the lifestyle changes and habits, that that should essentially kind of be the foundation as we are, trying to optimize our health and our wellness. Okay. All right, y'all. That's all I got. As always, sending love and light to you all, and I'll talk to y'all next time. All right, y'all. Take care.